I've known the longest, other than my wife, is Ed Klingberg's and his wife Marietta. We've known one another since 1964 in Palau. That's a long time. They knew me before I was married, but I had already started courting this woman. But the reason I'm doing the storytelling is because Ed loves my stories. He loves my stories, and he's always asking me, Ivan, can you tell me another story? Because he just enjoy your story so much. So for his benefit, I got a story for you. And also, I think I'd like to tell this story because I think Father Balahadi will appreciate this story. And other than myself and Elena down here, and Ed Klingberg's were the only three who aren't Chamorro or Filipino or mixed. And all these other people, the Chamorros and the Filipinos, know about these stories about traditional courtships in the Philippines, in Saipan, Rota, and Tini. But I think most of you have never actually partaken of such a courtship. But my wife and I have. And so I want to tell you about that very, very special courtship that went on for several years before we were finally married. So be prepared to hear this. It all started when I went to the Philippines in 1962 as a Peace Corps volunteer. There were 3 Peace Corps volunteers living in southern Leyte, and I was assigned to a barrio school, a small village with a fairly big school in the village of Ibarra. And I started teaching school there, working with the teachers. And one day, several months after school started, this woman was hired to teach home economics in the school. I took one look at her and was attracted. So I started trying to get her attention. She was not so ever interested in me. Every time I tried to approach her, she'd run away. Wanted nothing to do with me whatsoever. But I continued to try to get her to pay a little bit of attention to me. But she wouldn't. Finally, the school principal, not because of my attraction to her, but the school principal was kind of a drill sergeant, a female school principal at a fairly large school. Whatever she said, the teachers did. If she said jump, the teacher said how high. So she told my future wife to start preparing new meals for me and a few other teachers, just about 3 other teachers. So we had these magnificent meals at noon every day in the school that she was in charge of preparing. Well, that attracted me even more because of the meals. But she still wanted nothing to do with me. I tried to get her attention. No, she wouldn't listen to me. So I thought, well, I got to figure out some strategies to work this out. So the school village, her auntie had a house where she lived in, and was also a teacher at the school, and she lived near the school. She lived with her auntie, and her auntie had the key to the school. So on Saturdays, I figured, well, maybe I'll go to the school and prepare lesson plans for the following week. And that will give me an excuse to go to her house and ask for the key. And then after I've been there for a while, I didn't need to go to school to prepare lesson plans, but I thought this will work. So on Saturdays I'd write, and I lived a long way from the school. Way on the other side was the Poblacion, the town, way out in the far village on the other side of the town. And I'd ride all the way into the town, get in another vehicle and ride all the way out to her school, and then go and ask for the key, thinking, hey, I could get to talk to her. Well, she usually didn't come to the door. She'd send her niece, and I didn't, but I'd peek in and see if she was in there. And she'd be someplace, and I'd say, Pat, is your auntie here? Oh yeah, but she's busy. I said, well, can you have her give me the key? So she would come to the door and give me the key and send me on my way. So this went on for a few weeks, but I wasn't making any inroads at all. But I continued to do that. Then she moved from the village school back to the town, living with her mother. And for some, I think fate played a hand in this, because the key went from her auntie's house to her house in the Poblacion, in the town. So I had an excuse to go still to her house to get the key to go to the school on the weekends. So on Sunday I would go to the school and I would stop by the house and get the key on the way to school, and then when I finished I'd drop off the key at her house, always thinking, hey, maybe she'll get to see and talk to her. Still no interest. Finally, I have no idea why, but one day she invited me to come up into the sala and talk to her. Well, those of you who know the traditional courtships in the Philippines and in the Marianas know that you don't get to spend time alone. So I went into the sala, she sat on one side of the room, I sat on the other side of the room, and the other relatives and everybody else in the household was on the other wall. So we sat there, and I would arrive sometimes early in the afternoon and sit there for 2 or 3 hours, and we would talk about this and that and the other thing. And once in a while I would hint, what would it be like if you married, a guy like me? She didn't have much to say about that. So, and then one day she would give me maybe some soda to drink and a few biscuits. And she said, I can't give you food when you come, because if I give you food, that means we're courting. And I said, well, how would anybody know that? The neighbors can see, they can hear, so they'll know if I give you food. So she could never give me food. But that was okay with me. I only wanted her attention. So this continued, and those of you who know the culture there and here, we had a movie in the Poblacion, and once in a while I'd say, is there any chance we could go to the movie together? Oh, no, we don't do that. Not even with, I said, well, what if you bring your friends? No, not even then. We don't do that. So I never spent time alone with her, never got to take her on a date, but we continued to talk about all kinds of things, hour after hour, sitting there in the sala. Now, how exciting is that? But we did it. And then, by and by, time came for me to leave the Philippines. And I thought, well, what about her, And we talked about the possibility of a continuing relationship. But we were saying, oh, you never, to her, you don't want to have any relationship with an Americano, because it's hanggang lang pier. You know what that means? That means up to the pier only. They'll court you, they'll do whatever you want to get the relationship, but once they're ready to leave, that's the end. So everyone told her, hanggang lang pier, don't get in a relationship with Americanos. And she listened to that. So it was time for me to go to the pier and to leave. And the night before, the teachers in the district gave a huge despedida party for us 3 Peace Corps volunteers. Teachers showed up, we had a fabulous party, and that night, you see that picture over there? That was the closest I ever got to her. I got to ask her to dance. I held her hand for the first time. I touched her. But you can see how close we were. And there were times, one of the things they would do in the Philippines, if you'd have a party and people would dance, somebody would go around with a broom and they'd put it between you and make sure you were close together.
for the Holy
So
Spirit.
somebody was probably standing by with a broom ready to put it between us if we got too close together. So that was the end. I was going all the way back to the state, to Illinois, probably never to return, and she would never see me again. And on the way home, I went to Thailand, to Bangkok. And I don't know if any of you are familiar, but one of the things Buddhists practice is a thing called the chai sticks. And they put sticks in a bamboo tube, and they shake them up, and they throw them out on the table, and they have numbers on them. And then somebody reads your fortune. So I had this done. And the man who read my fortune said, oh, this guy had no idea who I was. But he said, you are leaving someone that you're very fond of, and you're going far away, and someday you're going to return. And you're going to have a relationship with this woman you're leaving. Well, what are the chances of that? So I went back to Illinois, Indiana, and spent several months. And then I had an opportunity to work for the Trust Territory. I thought, oh, that's going to put me back fairly close to the Philippines. And wow. So we were writing occasionally, but that was just it. Kind of friendship letters. So I told her I'm going back to Palau, or to Palau, back close to the Philippines. And we continued the letter writing. And by and by, after a year in Palau, she agreed that maybe we should have a lifetime relationship. But that could only happen if I had representatives there in her town that would speak on my behalf for this relationship. So fortunately in the school there was an elderly gentleman, Mr. Hiron, who spoke for me on my behalf, and then her uncle, who was a very powerful lawyer in the town, he kind of liked me. So those two people supported me in the family powwow, even though there were other family members that didn't want her to marry somebody like me. So it was agreed that we could get married. And she said yes. And so I went from Palau to the Philippines, and I was there for about a week, kind of complicated, but eventually we did get married, and I brought her back to Palau. Up to that time, I had never touched my wife's hand, other than in that photo there. I had never kissed her. We had never had premarital sex. Sure. So, believe it or not, that does happen.
Not with me.
And it worked. You know, 50 years later, we're still married. Isn't that magnificent? So I took her back to Palau, and we had our first daughter there in Palau, and then later we moved to Hawaii and had our second daughter, and then we moved to American Samoa and had a high-talking chief down there. And then in 1975 we moved here, and this is where we lived ever since. That's 40, how many years?
40.
25, 15, 25 plus 15 is 40 years. 40 years we've lived here. And you know who met us at the airport when we arrived on this island? This man and this man's father picked us, Isaac Calvo, picked us up at the airport and brought us to where we were going to stay. And that's why the Calvos are such close personal friends of ours over the years. And another one was Bobby Hunter's dad, Just Conception. So, and this guy, Ed Klingberg, we were the four amigos for so many years. And so it's been a good life. And that's a courtship that follows the traditional pattern of the Philippines of long ago and the Marianas of long ago, but most people have not experienced it, but we did. And look what it has done. So thank you all for coming. You're all very special to us, and we're very happy to share this evening with you. Thank you.
Wow, that wasn't an hour.
No.
So, wow, I'm very surprised. But there are a lot of us here tonight. We all maybe know each other and know